Welcome to another episode of The Financially Free Investor, where you will learn information and strategies on how to become financially independent by investing in real estate, something that is not taught openly in our society today. Financial freedom matters so you can live a bigger life, retire early, and do what matters most to you. Get ready to hear tried and true methods to becoming financially free with your host, Jordy Clark.
All right, everyone, welcome into another episode of The Financially Free Investor. I'm super excited to talk with today's guest, Mark Willis. He's a certified financial planner from the Chicago area. So welcome in, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Jordy. Glad to be on.
Yeah. So we connected like just through the universe, but why don't you give us maybe 4 or 5 minute version of kind of your story, how you got into everything you're into? Because, we were talking before we started recording, and I feel like we have a lot that kind of resonates together. So maybe let our audience kind of know who you are, what you do.
Out of the grand universe, man, it's good to bump into neighbors and friends like you. So yes, I've been on a financial journey since birth, but at age 5, I remember distinctly my first memory of money. I had collected somehow a paper bag's worth of money, about $50. I had $50 in a paper bag as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. And I remember my mom saying, all right, that's the litmus test. You're ready. Let's go open you up a checking account at the local bank. And so I made my way down with her to the bank. She was trying to teach me about money. And her job was to get all the paperwork done. And my job as a 5-year-old was to hand over my life savings to a stranger in a suit. And that didn't feel good. And ever since, I've been kind of suspicious of banks. And fast forward a few years, and now I'm 6 figures in student loan debt with my college degrees behind me in the midst of 2008, looking for work. And I had a massive payment. My joke is I married 2 women in college, my gorgeous wife and Sally Mae. She was along for the ride, and she wanted rent money every month from us, and she was going to get her pound of flesh, whether we were able to buy groceries or not. So this is in 2008. I got very interested in money when I had to start spending it, when I didn't have it to spend, that is. So my wife and I really got a deep dive education on our own personal financial strategies, our exposure to the stock market and more. I got a little bit crazy about it and ended up getting my certified financial planner designation. And in the midst of that, our main goal and focus, Jordy, was just how do we get out of this debt thing without being 42 years old and no more years of our youth really to compound our wealth, right? So we were in our late 20s just trying to figure out what's the right way to get debt free, and not just debt free, but better than debt free. We wanted to become something even better than debt free. We wanted to think about our legacy as early as possible. And so we ended up opening up a financial firm, got very interested in the real estate space and how important it is to have real estate in your portfolio to build true financial resilience. And boy, what a time that we're living in right now to need financial resilience. So we work with clients all over the country over Zoom or over the phone, and we figure it out. What does it take to be financially solvent, resilient, and prepared to create your own economy? To heck with what you hear in the news.
Man, I love that. And I was actually talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and I told him, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter what happens in the White House. What matters is what happens in your house, right? So
boom. The
whole idea of creating your own economy, maybe speak to that for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the recent conversation in the news has been around the Federal Reserve. At least if you're a nerd like me, I keep up with that sort of thing. And as it happens, they've been increasing the money supply since 2020, since the start of the pandemic. We've seen an increase of the money supply 40% over what we used to have. And it's actually more than all the money that's ever been created in this country in the past has been created in the last 24 months. More than all the money ever created in this country is now in our hands and in our wallets and in our pocketbooks. Do we feel like that much wealthier? No. In fact, since 1991, there's been a 10x increase in the money supply, 10x, okay, since 1991. But we've only had a 25% increase in our population since that same period of time. So that means we've got effectively 10 times more money, but do you feel 10 times wealthier than your parents did? in 1991. I don't. Most people probably don't. The problem is inflation. And the problem is they are increasing the money supply. So my question to you is, and for your listeners is, how can you increase your money supply? How can you fight the wages of inflation and in fact, become your own reserve? Become your own reserve. To heck with the Federal Reserve. Let's make your own reserve. Let's increase your own money supply. And let's do it in a way that doesn't create a bunch of unnecessary risks in the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you create your own reserve?
Well, there's the typical average ways to do it, but I'm not your average financial planner. And that's the name of our podcast too, not your average financial podcast. So we try to go a little contrarian. And the typical ways to do it are banks, savings accounts, CDs, money market accounts. And Jordy, you know the problems with that is that you're watching that money just piss down the drain. You're not really seeing much growth, and it's in the hands of the banks. So you're contributing to the problem. When you've got a bank savings account, big cushy checking account, money market account, even a brokerage account, you're participating in their banking system. Please realize that the banking system as we understand it today is a fairly modern phenomenon. Okay? The Federal Reserve is only about 100 years old. That's all. But banking has existed for 5,000 years. There's a great book by that title, Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. And he tracks the history of banking, the verb of banking, even though nouns, banks, hold that function in our society today, it's possible for you to hold the banking function in your life. So if you can avoid the banker's products, and instead insource the banking function in your life, you're going to win. Realize that whoever controls the banking function in your life controls your life. So if some other banker has the banking leash around your neck, you're going to do what they tell you to do. You got their interest rates. You got their repayment schedule. They'll repo the house or the car if you don't pay them on time. But if you've got the banking function in your own life, in your own house, you've created your own economy by default. You'll win the money game. And you can still do the things that we all want to do: buy cars, send the kids to college, buy the real estate deals. And I've seen it work. In fact, and I'll hush after this, as a certified financial planner, I can say with confidence now that whoever controls the banking function in your life matters more than what you got on your rate of return in your real estate or your mutual funds or anything else. It's the banking function is what is the smallest hinge that swings the biggest door in your financial life.
That's fascinating. So how does somebody become their own bank then?
Well, yeah, obviously there's two ways to go. Most people think about that and they think, well, wow, how do you actually, great sentiment, right? But how do you actually do it? One pathway is to, open up a bank charter, fund it with about $100 million of seed capital, and wait so you can open up your one tiny local bank branch. That's one way to go. Good on you if that's your pathway, The other path is through a very old financial vehicle that has captured my attention. It's become more and more compelling as one of the specialties we bring into our offices. It's something known as Bank on Yourself, which is essentially effectively it's a modernized form of a very old 200-plus-year-old financial asset called dividend-paying whole life insurance. Now, for those that didn't just unsubscribe, Jordy, I apologize, man, but I realize that not everybody is a huge fan of whole life insurance. But this is very different than the kind of life insurance that certain radio hosts love to hate on the radio programs. Okay, so this is custom designed to flood the policy with cash. Now, most people hear life insurance and they think, well, that's the money I'm going to leave my kids someday.
Sure.
But this kind of design of whole life insurance front loads it with massive amounts of cash that you have liquid access to. So I'll say 4 very quick things and I'll be done. Get your feedback and thoughts, take it wherever you want to go. Whole life insurance, if it's designed the bank on yourself way, and that's super important because there's a number of knockoff brands or marketing slogans out there, infinite this and family wealth banking that. But if it's truly designed the bank on yourself way, it does 4 things. Number 1, it's flooded with capital right away. So you have a massive amount of cash on hand that grows on a guaranteed basis. So outside of the stock market, outside of real estate, it's important as a CFP for my clients to have non-correlated assets, things that don't go down when other things go down. Some people think they're diversified if they've got all their money in 12 different mutual funds, Jordy, and you know that that's not right. Even 12 different rental properties in 12 different markets. That's still like having all of your eggs in 12 baskets. That's fine, but that's 12 baskets all on the same truck. Now, if that truck goes off a cliff, we're in big trouble. So we need some money. Some of our eggs need to be in baskets on other trucks. That's non-correlated assets. Okay, so that's the first piece, is it grows on a guaranteed and predictable basis every single year, regardless of what the market does. Imagine how that would feel all by itself. Second, it has access to the money, so you can get access to your cash in the policy, and there's no limits, there's no prohibitions, there's no limitations on what you can get access to, and, Jordy, there's no taxes when you get access to the cash. Just a big bucket of money you can grab as you wish, as you pack the money in there. And nobody's going to ask you what you're using the money for. It's private between you and the insurance company. So a lot of folks like to use it for their life needs or their business needs. Third, it is life insurance. So we're automatically going to leave our family more than we could ever save for them. That's pretty cool. If I put $1 into my savings account and die, my family gets $1. If I put $1 into my life insurance policy and die, my family gets, depending on your age, $5, $7, whatever it might be. So that's pretty cool. And that's income tax free as well. Lastly, and maybe most pertinent to our discussion about real estate, when I put this money into a true bank on yourself designed policy, I can access the money. I mentioned that earlier with no taxes due, but it's designed in such a way that I can get access to the cash, and the policy itself will continue to grow and compound uninterrupted as if I had not touched a dime of the money. So if I've got $100,000 in my policy, $100,000, let's say, and I borrow out $80,000 to invest in a real estate deal, my policy will still give me the uninterrupted compound guaranteed increase of my cash and the dividends, if there are dividends, as if I had not touched the money on the full $100,000. And I get the real estate deal and whatever it was going to give me. So to me, this is a great way to increase my yield without any additional market risk and without any additional volatility or beta. And, I don't know if we want to get into that further, but I better hush and hop off my soapbox.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So essentially you can use the money, and you guys, this is what the wealthy do, is they figure out how to make $1 be in as many investments as possible, right? So you can have it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm understanding you say, I could put $100,000 in a whole life policy. I make a return based on what me and the life insurance company agree on, call it 6%. But then I access the $100,000 and I could go buy a rental property. I could go, deploy it in a real estate syndication. I could go use that to flip a house. And so that the same dollar is getting 6% over here, while it's also getting 12%, 18%, whatever the return may be, right? So we're compounding our money faster. Is that what?
That's right.
Okay.
Hey, your money has to live somewhere. It's got to live somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're going to use it for something, whether it's a car or your kid's college or the down payment on the next property you're going to purchase. So you might as well put it somewhere where it will never stop compounding for as long as you live. Let that sink in for a minute. Isn't that what we're all shooting for anyway? Uninterrupted compound growth. It doesn't have to wow you. I mean, and I want to mention quickly that this is not a perfect like magic pill or anything. There's cost to the insurance. It's boring rates of return, middle single digits, like you mentioned. So it's not like we're going to hit it out of the park with the internal rate of return of this policy. It's going to be a nice alternative to your other cash buckets that you might have, right? It sure beats my CDs. It sure beats my savings accounts. But it's not meant to replace your investments or other parts of your financial life. The key piece here is it's the nitro and the glycerin. Okay. So you use the policy like peanut butter and jelly, like Batman and Robin, like nitro and glycerin. They just work better together. And if I can find great real estate deals and I come to closing with cash or with the down payment money, I can walk in there and close the deal, and I still get the growth on my money in the policy. I'll tell you a very quick story. There was a gentleman, he was just, a normal guy, photographer, doing his thing as a photographer, not really especially affluent. Started using one of these policies. First loan he borrowed against his policy to buy a mattress. Just wanted a nice bed to sleep in. Next loan, he borrows some money out to get some photography equipment. And his friends, his other colleague photographers and competitors, quite candidly, were watching him get this new lens, this new whatever lighting. And they're like, how'd you get that? How'd you do that? And he said, well, I borrowed from myself. I banked on myself here. And they said, well, can we bank on you too? And sure, yeah. So now his competitors are paying him a monthly check, borrowing from him. He borrows from the life insurance. He gets arbitrage there, and he gets a cash flow from his competitors. Fast forward a little bit more. He uses several policies that he's since accumulated to buy some 8-unit apartment building here in Chicagoland area. And now he's got a hard money lender that he had invested with, and he had put the down payment down, but he had borrowed it from his policy. Okay. And he borrowed it from his policy. So he gets the 8-unit. He keeps the growth of his money in the policy at the same time. Eventually, he buys out the hard money lender. Now he owns that property all on his own. And he's opened up several more policies as a result. This is a photographer. If he can do it, anybody can do it, right? So it to be a 100 millionaire to open up your own quote unquote bank. It's not a bank, obviously, but you can do this at really whatever pace and stage you're at in life.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So, and I want to follow up with a few more questions, but be sensitive to your time. So, we'll kind of put that strategy to bed. If people want to find more about it, you've got a YouTube channel, you've got a podcast. I'm sure you go deeper on that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. So, your podcast and YouTube channel is not your average financial podcast. So if anyone wants to learn more about that, definitely go check that out. But maybe talk to me a little bit about The Secret to Lifetime Financial Security. So it's a book you wrote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. It was a #1 best-selling book. I was privileged to get to write it with a number of other co-authors who all have contributions to that book. And, we all sat down to think about if we, as financial planners, certified financial planners, accountants, attorneys, it was an all-star cast, and I was just privileged to be a part of it. But the key to this whole book was, what do you want your money doing for you? Let's take away the labels of Roth IRA or real estate or annuities or even whole life insurance. Let's just talk about characteristics, attributes, personality traits of your money, because where you put your money makes it do different things. Okay. So, 401k is going to make your money act different than a savings account or a real estate deal. And so most people are just sort of given the green light to do whatever it is that the banks are wanting them to do or their parents want them to do. And they never stop to think about, well, what do I truly want my money doing for me? So sit down, take 5 minutes. It's totally free. Grab a legal pad and think about if you could just wave a magic wand and had no restraints. You knew it was going to be a new financial product created out of thin air by you, your pope of money for the day. What would you want your money doing for you? Okay, so would you want it to be tax-free in the future or tax-deferred today? Would you want it to have a consistent rate of return? Would you want it to have access to the cash for any purpose? Would you want to be able to use it for your kids' college? Would you want to be able to keep it private, maybe off grid, so that creditors or people trying to sue you or whatever couldn't find that asset? If you're in real estate, you're going to really want some money that's off the radar of the IRS and off the radar of the of people who might try to take what's yours. So private accounts, camouflaged if possible. Again, this is totally legal. You want to just kind of blue sky think for a minute and think, all right, if I could just wave my magic wand, what's my long laundry list? And then go find the labels, CDs, money market accounts, real estate, dynastic trusts, whatever it is that you're trying to do. There's probably a financial vehicle out there that'll let you do it, but you got to start with you and what you want. So few people truly know what they want.
Man, that is so true. And because so often we subscribe to the dogma, like, oh, I'm supposed to go to school so that I can get a good job, right? So that I can then save money. And what people don't realize is the banks are, if you deposit $10,000, they're leveraging your $10,000 and they're loaning out $100,000, $200,000 to somebody else. and they're creating it out of thin air, right? So, but most people don't realize that because they've never taken the time to study the banking industry, right? So the interesting thing is, and I totally agree with you, that everyone should be sitting down and going, well, what do I want? Because who cares what the bank is making? Like, quite frankly, if you shouldn't focus on what other people make, you should focus on what you're making and how you can make your money work for you in the way that you need it to. So I absolutely resonate and love what you're saying there. That's phenomenal advice. And most people don't take the 15 minutes, 30 minutes to sit down and just go over that, right? Like, yeah, so it's phenomenal.
And I would say, everybody else has a plan for your money. Be careful of financial gurus or banks telling you what to do with your money, because they've got a plan for your money. Okay. Don't do what banks tell you to do with your money. Instead, watch what banks are doing with their money and go do that instead. That's going to be the pathway to financial freedom. Because why? Because banks have been successful at it for a very long time. There's a reason why banking has been around in our human civilization for as long as friendship or art. Okay, for 5,000 years. There's a reason why. It's because banking is a very profitable business. And if you can bring it back down to the you and me level, rather than leaving it for the mega banks or the mortgage companies, it's okay to get debt. We have plenty of reasons to use mortgages in our real estate practice and use the bank for our convenience, rather than letting the bank use us for their convenience. But the key is, who is the one pulling the purse strings? Who's the one in control? Who's got the puppet strings? Do you have the strings on the bank, or do they have the strings on you?
So good. So the one question I have for you, and again, I want to be sensitive to your time, so we can wrap up with this question. Well, actually, no, I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. One is, why should somebody hire a financial planner, and at what point in their financial journey should they do it? So we'll start there, and then I'll ask the 3 questions I ask every guest, and we'll put a bow on it with that.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of ways to hire a financial planner. I honestly don't think you need to hire a financial planner. Here's why. Generally, he or she will charge you a fee for a binder of recommendations, from your auto insurance to your estate plan. And where does that binder usually go? It goes right behind you on the bookshelf, right? And then if you implement any of his or her suggestions, somebody else, or he or she, will be paid a commission to implement the plan. Now, I don't have any problem with people making money to do good work. And there's a place and a time for people just getting a flat fee for that binder. Sometimes you just want that sort of unbiased advice. And by the way, we sit down and have one-on-one consultations with folks all over the country to get a second opinion on what they already have, or to set up something from the start. But generally speaking, the people who need and want to set up a financial planner don't need one. And the people who really need one either can't afford one, or are pushed out of the marketplace because of the model of compensation that most financial advisors are paid. How are they paid? They're paid on something called assets under management. Assets under management is like, the more you make, the more we make. That's kind of the concept. But what they don't tell you in their financial planning office with their big cushy chairs and leather seats is that even if you lose money in the market, the financial advisor will still get paid. In fact, according to the Department of Labor, a 1% fee on your retirement account, IRA, let's say, over a 35-year period will gobble up almost a third of your life savings. 1% fee. That doesn't sound like a lot, but over a 35-year period, that's your typical worker years and or retirement years. That's devastating. That's a third of your money gone to fees. And then you factor in taxes on top of that. What are you left with? So the general model of financial planning is to help you go up the mountain of retirement while your accounts are growing, and to leave you up there to find your own way down. Because as you come down the mountain, they're paid less and less. Okay, so I'm getting off I know I'm on my high horse here, but it's devastating to most retirees when they can't get the calls back from their financial planner because he or she is running after the new kid with the high income and the juicy IRA balance. So we need to find better models of compensation. We believe we founded at our firm, Lake Growth Financial Services. We end up costing folks about 1/10 as much. We've done the math on that. We've got podcast episodes showing that with spreadsheets and more. We believe in transparency. So for folks that want transparency, a guide, a third person between him and her, if you know what I mean, kind of a coach between the two spouses. If you want a guide up the mountain and also to come safely back down the mountain to plant your flag at base camp, or even to pass it on to the next generation, that's what a true financial planner does. Everybody else is just a stock jockey, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I love that you guys have your podcast and YouTube channel, because it allows people to kind of do this self-discovery without a commitment, right? And then, if they want to go deeper and they're interested in generational wealth and everything that comes along with that, obviously you guys can facilitate whatever needs there. So that's awesome. Okay, we're going to wrap it up with two quick questions. First is, what is one thing you would want to tell someone who's working towards financial freedom?
Again, the pick the big rocks first, then go for the small rocks and sand. What is the biggest rock in your financial life? I believe it's whoever is controlling the environment in which your money lives. The environment, it's like the fish in my aquarium across the house there. If I mess with that environment, if I raise the temperature, fish is dead. So who is controlling the environment in which your money lives? Is it a bank or is it you?
So good. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently on your journey?
I would not have paid off my debts the old-fashioned way using the snowball method. Terrible waste of money. Think about that for a minute. Every dollar you spend today is gone forever. Also gone is whatever that $1 might have grown to over my lifetime had I let it invest and continuously compound. So don't follow the traditional advice of paying off your debts or paying cash for cars or paying cash for your down payments, even paying taxes, property taxes or income taxes. All these major expenses, we're all going to spend millions of dollars over our lifetime. How do we make the purchase? Again, how you make your major purchases matters more to me than what you got on your mutual funds. So that would be my pathway to financial freedom, is thinking about better and more creative ways, like the bank on yourself concept we mentioned earlier, to make those major purchases.
Yeah, man, that's great. Well, Mark, I really enjoyed having you on. Again, I want to be sensitive to your time, but thank you so much for the wisdom and knowledge that you're imparting, not only on this podcast, but also on your podcast and your YouTube channel. I'm excited to connect with you and hope to stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if it's all right, I'll just mention, if folks would be open to having a quick conversation, love to have you jump on my calendar. We'd be happy to speak for 15 minutes. Is it okay if I leave a note with where folks could find me?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll tag it in our show notes, but yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Well, look in the show notes, and don't forget to leave Jordy a 5-star review, because he works really hard and has a great show. I really loved your recent episode on hard money lending, Jordy. So thank you for that. Guys, if you want to check us out and check out our podcast, he's mentioned it, Not Your Average Financial Podcast. But if you'd like to get to know us and have a conversation about this strategy or others, go to kickstartwithmark.com.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. And yeah, definitely subscribe, review both my podcast, and head over and see what Mark's up to. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Financially Free Investor. If you found value in this episode or know someone who would find value in this information, please share with them, subscribe, and send us a review.